Hello, hi, welcome once again to M5's English language learning program, Let's Speak English. I'm Gav Duncan and I'm here on your TV screen to help you learn English. Now, are you sitting comfortably? Yes? Good. And are you ready for today's lesson? Yes? Good. Okay. Well, let's learn English together. And welcome to the studio. How are you all today? Is your day going well? If the answer to that question is yes, then that's great. If the answer to that question is no, then I'm sure that everything is going to start getting better. As of now. Okay, well, the day starts here. Let's get back into the ring with some more revision of what we learned in the last few weeks. Now, in the last few weeks, we learned about some of the larger numbers as well, didn't we? Yes, that's right. So let's have a brief reminder of what we learned about larger numbers, shall we? Okay, good. Now, today, it's time for us to take another step. It's time for us to look at the next level of numbers. And the next level is the thousands. Okay, so we know that we put the word "and" before the last two numbers when we're dealing with numbers above 100. So this means that we know that 900 is 900, 909 is 909, and 999 is 999. We know the ordinal version of these numbers too, don't we? Okay, so what comes after 999, 999? Well, after 999 we have 1000. 1000, 1000. Brilliant! We've reached another milestone. We've reached 1000. Excellent. Now, one thing we have to be careful with is this. When we write the number 1000, we have to make sure that we put a comma after the 1, like this. So, whenever we write a number above 1000, we have to put a comma after the 1. So, the number after 1000 is 1001. And the number after that is 1002. Then we get 1003, then 1004, then 1005, etc., etc. So when we write numbers above 1000, then we always have to put a comma after the 1. Simple, isn't it? Okay, so let's think about the other numbers we can make. Well, we know all the numbers from 1 to 100, don't we? Yes, of course we do. And we also know the numbers from 100 to 999, don't we? Yes, right again. And so far, we combined all of the numbers we know and we created new numbers. We started with single-digit numbers, or units. Then we moved on to two-digit numbers, the tens. Then we moved on to three-digit numbers, the hundreds. And now we learned about four-digit numbers, the thousands. So now we can put all of that information together and create a lot of different numbers. Okay, so let's look at some bigger numbers and how we can write them. Look at the numbers on the screen and then together we'll check how we write them. Now, let's just take a quick look at some important points about those numbers. There are a couple of things we need to be careful about. The first thing is that we've got to remember to put "and" in when we add numbers after the 100. It's not 102, but 102. It doesn't matter if we create larger numbers, we still have to put "and" in when we add numbers after the 100. 1002 is not 1002, but 1002. Good. Now, what else do we need to be careful with? Well, when we write the thousands as numbers, we always need to use a comma. So it's 1, 0, 0, or 23, 0, 0, or 45, 0, 0, or x, 0, 0. Also, when we write numbers in the thousands, we use commas to separate the thousands from the hundreds and the tens, like this. Good. Now, after we looked at large numbers, we moved in the opposite direction, didn't we? That's right. We started looking at fractions. Okay. Now, let's try something different. Let's try moving in the other direction. We've looked at large numbers. Now, let's look at some smaller numbers. Let's look at some fractions. Let's look at numbers which are less than 1. Okay. Now, numbers which are less than 1 are called fractions. We can either use imperial fractions or we can use decimal fractions. They're the same. We just write them and say them differently. Sometimes we use imperial fractions when we talk about a half of something, and sometimes we use decimal fractions when we talk about 0.5 of something. They mean the same, we just write them and say them differently. Okay, now we know lots of different fractions. We use lots of different fractions every day. And the ones we use most are half, a third, 2/3, a quarter, and 3/4. Okay, these are the most common imperial fractions we use. Now, let's look at what the words actually mean. Let's see the logic. Well, the verb to half means to cut something into 2 equal parts, to make 2 halves. 2 halves make 1. So, if we have a half of something, it's 50% of something. If we split something into thirds, then we need 3 of them to make 100%. So a third is 33.33333 recurring of something. To quarter something is to cut it into 4 pieces. So we need 4 to make 100%. This means that a quarter is 25% of something. We can use 2 verbs here, to halve, meaning to cut into 2 equal parts, and to quarter, meaning to cut into 4 equal parts. There is no verb to third. So, those are fractions, less than 1 of something. Now, we also know the decimal versions of those fractions. The decimal system is very simple. Everything is based on 10, so that makes it nice and simple. Now, what do you think the decimal version of half is? That's right, it's 0.5. Half equals 0.5. Simple. All right. When I said that, did you hear which word I used? Correct-a-doodle-doo. I said 0.5, didn't I? Now, if you remember our first lesson on numbers in English, you probably remember that we talked about different ways of saying O. When we say the number naught in British English, we usually say naught. It's possible to also say zero. Most Americans say zero. If we say the number 0, 0, O in a series of numbers, when we tell someone a telephone number, for example, then we don't say naught but O. If we're measuring something, then we say 0. Now, we also learned that in sports, the number 0, 0 changes. In most sports, the number 0 or 0 is nil. But in tennis and table tennis, the number 0, 0 is called love. Tottenham 5, Swansea City 0. West Bromwich Albion 3, Watford 1. West Ham United 1. Arsenal 5. Juan Martín del Potro beat Novak Djokovic 6-love. Okay, so we know that we can say the number 0, 0 in different ways. But right now, at the moment, we're concentrating on decimal fractions. So let's get back to the fractions. When we say a decimal fraction, we have to make sure that we say each number separately. If we want to say 3/4 as a decimal fraction, we say 0.75. 0.75, not 0.75. Great. It doesn't matter if we're talking about a decimal fraction or not. The number or numbers that come after a decimal point are always said as separate figures. So, always remember, we use a decimal point to show that something is less than 1, and after a decimal point, we have to say each number separately. If we're talking about a decimal fraction, or if we're talking about numbers after a decimal point, we always say the numbers after a decimal point as separate numbers. It's 0.87634, 0.87634, not 0.87634. And we say 3.56 billion euros. 3.56 billion euros, not 3.56 billion euros. Now, what else do we need to be careful about? Well, we have to make sure that we use a full stop, not a comma, before the fraction. When we talk about thousands, we put a comma before the 3 noughts, or the last 3 digits. When we look at 33,546, or when we write 142,243, we separate the thousands from the rest of the number with a comma. But when we write a decimal fraction, we don't use a comma. With decimal fractions, we use a full stop to indicate that it's less than 1. When we write 0.5, we put a full stop between the 0 and the 5. When we write pi, we put a full stop, a point, between the 3 and the fraction of the number, and we say point. 0.5, pi equals 3.14159. And that's it. Our 15 minutes, our quarter of an hour, has come to an end. Thanks for watching. Check out the m5tv.hu website and see me back here tomorrow afternoon for some more English fun. See you later. Bye.